So in the next 45 minutes or so, I'm going to be talking about how important it is to get the answers that our clients need. We're really in the answer business, certainly not in the insurance business. And I would say we're not really in the investment advice business either. We're in the answer business, right? And so what do I mean by that? At the very end of the day, our clients need answers and they hire us to help them think through those questions and ultimately figure out what those answers are. Like, how am I going to retire? How am I going to send my kids to college? How am I going to protect what I'm building? What happens if something goes wrong? You know, how am I going to make sure that I'm properly cared for should something occur and not run out of money? Who is going to be sure that my wishes and goals are actually executed if I'm gone? And how will our family legacy be maintained? These are just some of the questions that clients need. Now, what we end up doing is we put together an asset allocation for them and we determine their risk tolerance. We put them on a budget, perhaps. We do all these tactical items, but at the very end of the day, what it really is doing is answering these important questions, right? And these important questions, and we need to have those answers. And I got to tell you, I didn't really realize so acutely that I was in the answer business until my mom passed away on Labor Day of 2018. And so I want to share, a pretty personal story about what happened, but more than that, what I really understood about how important it is to get our clients the answers that they need, especially when they're in a very tough spot, like a loved one passing away. So the short story is they found my mother in Lake Michigan on Labor Day weekend in 2018, floating in the water. And she was pulled out of the water. They tried to resuscitate her for something like a half hour. They couldn't resuscitate her, end up going to the hospital. She's on life support effectively in the hospital. I get a telephone call from my sister. Hey, Roddy, they found mom in Lake Michigan. You got to get up here. Well, up here is Kenosha, Wisconsin. I live in a suburb of Chicago. It's about an hour and 20 minutes away to get up there. I'm like, what? And I'm like, what happened? And my sister's like, I don't know. You just got to get up here. So I tell my wife what's going on. I pack the smallest pack that I can and I run out the door. Well, I'm doing 80 miles an hour on the expressway. Unfortunately, Googling woman found in Lake Michigan to try to determine what the heck's going on. So we fast forward a little bit and ultimately she ends up being brain dead and she's being kept alive with life support. And so my family, unfortunately, had to take a vote to take her off life support because she hadn't exacted her powers of attorney, right? And so my family voted to take her off life support. I believe she wanted to be off life support, but I'm not positive about that. And I want you to know that the vote wasn't unanimous. I have a brother. We've got some issues, and that's secondary, except to understand that many families have issues within themselves, and there's often a level of dysfunction. Then a catastrophe occurs in the family, found mom floating. Now everybody's in a chemical imbalance state, right? In a high stress state. And now they need answers. And the first answer we needed was, did mom want to be kept alive on life support? And nobody knew the answer to that question. So then we had to vote on that question, and it wasn't unanimous, and it causes issues, right? We took her off life support. We had to make another decision for her, which was, does she want to be buried or does she want to be cremated? And we voted to bury her. I think she wanted to be buried, but I'm not positive of that. So we had to vote. Why? Because she hadn't exacted her trust documents, and we didn't know the answers to these things. And so me, as a professional and been in this business since 2000, I got a little afraid and got a little bit embarrassed that we didn't know some of these answers that were needed, right? And by the way, if anyone is positioned to be able to deal with this at time of death, it would be me, right? Based upon what I do and what I understand. So I want to share with you humbly a little bit about how I may have failed a little bit in some of the planning, how my mom may have failed a little bit in some of her planning, but I got this acuteness of what we really need to think about. What answers do we need relative to someone's death? Okay. And the answers that we needed, my family needed, the first question was, is Dale going to be okay? So Dale is my stepfather. And so The real question behind that is the math okay? Now, my parents were financial planning clients of a financial planner friend of mine, and they were well insured as well through me. And so they were clients. And through that process, I knew immediately that Dale was going to be okay financially. And I got to tell you, if I couldn't answer that and say, I don't know, or worse, I say, no, he's not okay, I don't know how I could have lived with that. But I knew immediately in 1 second. I didn't have to look at the accounts. I know what they earn. I know what they save. I know what their plans are because I'm one of their planners. Is the math okay? And the math was okay. Then the second thing is, where is everything, right? I'm going to dig into these a little bit more, but where is everything? Everything that we need to figure things out. Well, we knew where everything was because, again, we have a financial planning relationship. It was really the third bullet point there. What would or what does or what did, in this case, my mom want? And that's where we had her introduced to an estate planning attorney, and they had met with that attorney for a couple of times, but they've never exacted their estate documents. And because of which, we never understood whether she wanted to be kept alive. We never understood if she wanted to be buried. So the third thing that we didn't know that was actually harder than the first two. See, I feel pretty good that she wanted those things, but I don't know that. Okay. But the thing that was hardest for my family, which just kind of surprises me looking, outside looking in, is what to dress her in the coffin. I don't know if you guys have ever even thought of that, and maybe you have because maybe you've been in a position like I have. But that was really hard for my family to determine, well, what do you think she would want to wear? And what about her jewelry, right? Well, what about her makeup? Like, how would she want to be presented, right? And so that was just odd. But we were at a disadvantage effectively because we had to answer this question without input from my mom. What did she want? I don't know. Did you ever talk to her about it? No, not really. Gosh, I wonder what she wanted. And by the way, that's hard enough if we're in a rational spot. Like here today, 5+ years ago, I'm in a much calmer spot relative to my mom's death than I certainly was when I get that telephone call. And so now we have a hijacking, an amygdala hijacking, and we have to come up with all kinds of answers, not just these three, but I've done some research and it turns out that there's somewhere between like 30 and 50 answers that need to be answered within the first few days of death, right? And those things have to be answered at the worst possible time for the people who are answering those questions, right? So can we give a roadmap to our loved ones so that they know what's going on? So the math, okay, what does that really mean? Well, was there enough for final expenses? And certainly there is. We don't have to have insurance for final expenses, but what is our plan for final expenses? When we have to write that check, how's that check going to be written, right? It'd be helpful for us to know that, right? Can Dale still retire, right? I mean, they were only a couple years away from retirement and just bought this huge RV, like some kind of bus almost. Beautiful. They're ready to retire. They're ready to go out and live their life. And by the way, she wasn't able to. I don't know that I mentioned, but she was 58 years old when she passed. So just way too early, right? So can Dale still retire? The answer is yes. And in fact, Dale has indeed retired, right? So he's retired subsequent to my mom's passing. Did he need to change his lifestyle? Not mathematically, he didn't. His lifestyle ended up changing because his life partner is gone, right? So his lifestyle changed, but it wasn't forced to because the math was okay. We want to make sure all of our clients, in the worst day of their life, we could look at them and we could say, you're going to be okay. And I am so glad that I could look at Dale on the worst day of his life and my life and be able to tell him it's going to be okay mathematically. Well, then where is everything? Well, I already determined we were working with a wealth advisor. One of the things that kind of surprised me a little, which doesn't surprise me looking back, but we really needed to know who's our contact at my mom's work. See, she had some benefits, right? Like group life insurance. She actually had an accidental death and dismemberment policy there as well. Well, who do we need to track down to try to get that stuff, right? So where is everything? Okay. And then, as I mentioned, what does mom want? Life support, does she want to be buried? What kind of services does she want? Okay, so we never talked through what kind of services she wants, so we put together the service that we felt was best and most loving, but we didn't get any of her feedback. Okay. Now, as an aside, I'm married now for 15 years, and my wife, Clara, has a mother, Grace, who's 84 years old today. So she would have been like 79 when my mom passed, and my mom was 58, so she's a good 20 years older. Grace and I have a great relationship, and we always have. And she's come straight off the boat from Italy. And I say that directly because that's true. But what I'm relaying is she is very, very private, and she doesn't want anybody in her business. And I respect that. And she's always sort of made that known to me, even 20 years ago. And 20 years ago, I would say, hey, Grace, I do not want to be in your business at all. And the fact that you don't want to share anything with me is completely fine, and I respect it dramatically. What's important to me is I want to make sure you're okay. Would you be okay, and would you be willing to meet with a financial advisor that I might be able to introduce you to, so that you can work with that person to be sure that you're on track? And she agreed way back then. And so that made me feel very good. I'll call that sort of level one, if you will. Well, another thing to know about Grace is that she gives hugs. Maybe you have some people like this. She gives hugs, but they're sort of like iffy hugs, in my opinion. I like a nice hug. I like a nice big bear hug. And that's just not how she rolls, and that's fine. Well, my mom passes away. And the first time I saw Grace after my mom passed away, we have a 79-year-old woman like jumping into my arms, like almost with no exaggeration, like leaping into my arms with the tightest embrace ever. This is important. This is what life's about, people, right here. And so I know part of that was she was supporting me for sure. Also, part of it was, she's 21 years older than my mother, and my mother's just died, and she's approaching 80, which, by the way, I know was a tough age for her to approach, right? She started feeling, that she's getting too old, effectively. Okay? So what's happened is within 1 month after my mom passing away, and after we deal with everything and we go that route, Grace agreed to sit down with me and Clara, my wife, her sister Angela. We sat down at her kitchen table and we asked her about these answers. Listen, this isn't fun, but she agreed. And by the way, she was open. Okay. All it took was my mom dying. I say that with a, I don't know what kind of laugh, but it opened things up, because what's important here is our love for one another. And what's important is the demonstration of love and respect to the loved ones, and what did they want. So Grace, would you mind sharing with us what you want? And we went through line by line. Okay, you already bought your plots. Where exactly are they, right? Where are all your paperwork? And most of what she has is accounts that are titled with the daughter's name. So they're, joint accounts that are going to transfer on death. Okay, so where are those, and what do those look like? By the way, where are you keeping all of this information? We talked about the service specifically. What kind of service do you want? Do you want us to run pictures up top? Do you want us to do boards? Do you want any music played? All right. What do you want to be dressed in? Like, we went through all of that. And what it amounted to is we put together a Google document that's about 1.5 pages or maybe 2 pages long, that just kind of bullet points these things. And so it's an instruction manual. So unfortunately, and knocking on wood, one day we're going to get a telephone call. And that telephone call is going to be, you got to get over here. We're going to go, what happened? They're going to say, you're going to have to get over here. One day that's going to happen. And when it does, we're going to have this little treasure map. And I don't mean that disrespectfully. I mean that respectfully. We're going to have a treasure map. And that treasure map is going to direct us to be able to have the answers that we need. And I believe it's an extreme demonstration of love to be able to do that. I am not mad at my mother whatsoever, but I've got to tell you, it's not that great to pass away and have your kids have to vote on these things. I know that was never her intention. I'm not slandering her, but I'm saying, hey, we need to give our clients and ourselves the right and the expectation to go ahead and put this together, because it's a demonstration of love instead of just hiding from it. By the way, I got pretty afraid personally at that time. Why was that? Because I was in the same spot as my mother. Math was okay. If I pass away, I know Claire's going to be okay. I'm well insured. I've got investments, etc. We knew where everything was. I'm working with a wealth advisor. Claire's clued in on all of that. But what do I want? What does she want? Well, we didn't exact a trust at that point, right? And by the way, sort of as a side, I didn't really think I really needed to because we don't have any kids, you know? It's like, you know, except guess what? What I've figured out is that my estate plan is actually extremely complicated because I don't have kids. See, normally, whatever I have would go to my spouse, and then if my spouse isn't here, it would go to the kids, and then ultimately the grandkids. Well, there's no kids. So when we start really thinking about this and answering what do we want, well, we determined that there's a number of individuals, including friends of mine. I have something like 20 different beneficiaries and about 4 different charities. And I'm just describing that to you to say, well, I didn't even really know that that's exactly what I wanted until I sat down and I was in denial. So this is a little embarrassing to say, but I've been in this business since 2000 and I didn't really believe that I could prematurely die. It is just, it's insane to hear myself say that out loud. But I was in denial. Denial is a powerful thing. And my mom died and that denial went away immediately. And that's why I got scared because I felt this huge responsibility that I hadn't taken care of. And I'm a very diligent person generally. And so I recognize, oh my God, I did not do this and I got to do it right now. I mean, I remember the irrationality thinking that like maybe I could die like that day. Odd. It's just odd. Right? Now, again, this is emotional, right? And maybe you can see me, I'm getting a little bit emotional. But this is what's important about life, okay? My accounts have performed very well over the last 12 months. I'm happy about that. That's a good thing. That's not what's important about my life, right? What's important about my life is me executing my goals intentionally and on purpose and doing so with the coordination of my wife and then figuring out these tactical things that are going to fund our ability to do that, right? They're going to enable our ability to do that. And so we are being great leaders when we are stewarding our clients through this type of topic. And what I think happens so often is the topic gets disregarded or ignored because it's not fun to talk about. And it requires some emotionality about it. Many wealth advisors, many of my best friends that are wealth advisors are often very logical minded. They're good at math, and they're very rational, and that is extremely important to be a wealth advisor. And you know what? At the same time, having a high emotional intelligence and being able to ask people these questions to be able to craft a plan, that's a little different skill set. If you've tuned into this coaching corner in the past, you know that I really believe that we need to be able to touch a heart before we touch a mind, right? Especially relative to insurance, because the mind says, I don't need insurance and it's too expensive anyways. The heart says, I love my family. I want to have favorable outcomes, right? And that's something different. And so we have to sort of bridge the gap between those two things. Okay, so again, it's the answers, it's not insurance. So we've got to ask better questions of our clients. You know, have you considered the impact to your retirement plan if one of you gets sick and needs care? I didn't say, have you looked into long-term care insurance and you probably need it? I wonder if you can afford it. Didn't say that. I asked, have you considered what the impact would be and how do you feel about that? Have you ever thought about that? That's a great opening question in my opinion. Would you prefer that your family provide your care or would you rather them coordinate your care? Did I say you need to buy insurance there? I'm just asking, how, have you thought about this? Have you viewed this? Would you like me to stress test your financial plan? Right? Again, that's a lot relative to long-term care. My favorite question is probably the bottom right there. What's important to you regarding your legacy? Well, I don't know. What do you mean about legacy? Well, you know, at the end of the day, if you're gone, is there anything that's important to you either spiritually or mathematically or energetically that may be important to you, right? And by the way, probably no one's really ever asked them that. And then we can ask, okay, well, what if your plan effectively breaks, right? How would you feel about that? Would you like to learn what other clients in your situation might be considering or what they might be putting in place to ensure or increase the likelihood anyhow to ensure that our goals ultimately do come to fruition, right? So it's through the art of questioning and really understanding what's truly motivating people. And then we can show them how their portfolio and their insurance will help enable them to get the thing that they want. And relative to insurance specifically, if we're just asking if they want the insurance, almost never do they want the insurance. There's really two times that they want the insurance. Okay? The first time is when they're uninsurable. And I'm not trying to be rude, but people who are uninsurable want to buy insurance. Just pause on that one a minute. Is that kind of ironic? Okay. So it's pretty ironic, right? The people who want it are the people who can't get it. The people who can get it are the ones that don't want it. Isn't that interesting? And it's denial. I think a lot of it is denial. And they're thinking with their mind and not their heart. I'm not saying that we should get rid of the mind. Let's be smart about things. We need to make sure it's mathematically feasible. We have to have it in context. We want to make sure we're getting a good deal, all of that, right? But we have to coordinate the mind and the heart together. The financial planning process is the process to get this done. Absolutely. I've been working with wealth advisors the last 20 years and coming in inside of the context of a financial plan or a business succession plan or an estate plan or maybe a long-term care or extended plan. The context is really about what is it you're after? What are your goals? Then we're defining current reality. Where are we today? And then we're bridging a gap between where we are today and where we want to go into the future. And then that's how we determine to pull together asset allocations, and we allocate dollars to the 529 plan. We look at insurance, all of that. And so relative to insurance in the financial plan, why that's important is we say, hey, it looks like I've got you in the green in the retirement plan. Isn't that beautiful? Now, can we have a conversation about what are the 1, 2, or 3 things that could go wrong that could keep us from getting there? And then how do you feel about that? What keeps you up at night? Would you like to learn more about how we could mitigate or mute that risk through the use of insurance products? And so insurance products effectively fund our goals and ensure that our financial plan comes to fruition. And so I am absolutely convinced that the best way to deliver insurance solutions is through the context of a plan. Absolutely convinced. Now, what we have to pay attention to if we get into these great conversations with these clients and we touch their heart and we educate them and we get them to consider, we have to recognize that change is hard. Okay? I don't know if you've ever experienced that. I experience it all the time. You know, I try to make changes and making changes is difficult. We're creatures of habit. That middle bullet point there is something I think about all the time. A very good friend of mine is a clinical psychologist, and he's the one who trained me on this. He says, Rod, people respect wisdom, but they obey pain. Now, what does that mean? I think the average client understands that it's wise to buy insurance. Now, that's sort of a generic statement, but they understand that it's wise to protect their portfolio. It's wise to protect their ability to earn an income. It's wise to protect against an unexpected illness, but they obey their pain. Well, what does that mean? Well, it's painful to talk about these things, so I don't want to talk about them, even though it's wise. Okay? It's painful to go through an underwriting process and get picked apart by the insurance company, so I don't do it, even though it's wise. It might be painful to talk to an insurance agent, and so I don't want to do that either. Right? And so just because people respect wisdom doesn't mean they actually take action because they're obeying their own pain. Now, by the way, sometimes it's an absence of pain. That's kind of what I had. Okay. I knew it was wise to put together a trust document. I'm in this business. I know it's wise, but I didn't have any pain about it because I knew the math was okay. Most everything I have is transferred by contract anyways. My wife's on the accounts. I don't have kids. I'm 46, although at the time 41. So, you know, I got time to do that. Right? I had no pain until what? Until my mother died. Then my pain went up to a 10, and I took care of stuff immediately, right? It took extreme pain in order for me to take action. I'm not really happy about that. I'm not super proud about that. I'm just sharing with you that if that can happen to me, do you think that that's happening to any of our clients? Okay. I think it's happening to our clients, and if I can be so bold, I think it's happening probably to some of the people that are on this call. So with love, if it's you and you're procrastinating on the answers for your own family, please don't do that any longer. Take action right now, please, because someone's going to regret it. Right? My mom's hopefully in heaven somewhere. I hope she's not crushed with guilt. I doubt that she is, but I guarantee you that she wishes that she exacted those documents. I guarantee you she did. I guarantee you. She loved us so much and she wouldn't want us to have added pain. It's painful enough that she's gone. So if I put it on thick enough for you here, did I? I think I probably did. It's not my intention, but this is the business that we're in. This is it. And by the way, if you're a CFP, this is the business. These clients don't know what we know. They're not experts in the things that we're experts in, and they haven't seen other client situations like we have. So they count on us dramatically to ask the right questions and bring these things forward. And what always occurs to me is that if we aren't bringing them forward, then who is? And the answer generically is one of two things. Either no one's bringing it forward, which means these people aren't having this very important planning conversation, or a competitor is bringing it forward. Philip Simonson, one of my mentors, likes to say that your clients are somebody else's prospects. And when you do a comprehensive full financial plan for them and address all of their items, or at least coordinate all of their items, you end up creating what we call competitive immunity, where you can't ever be shook away. Okay, you got guys that are focused on insurance in the world, like Northwestern Mutual guys. They're really good at getting into these kind of conversations. They're really good at getting people to take action on the insurance. And then once they take action on the insurance, you know what else they're really good at? Your financial advisor never brought this up to you? You've been working with them for 13 years. They never brought that up to you, huh? I wonder if you'd like a second opinion on the investment portfolio. Is that something that I might be able to help you with? Now, again, I'm not trying to be fear-based, but to think that that doesn't happen is not true, because it does happen. Now, hopefully it's not happening to you. And again, what our job is to motivate our clients to operate in their own best interests. And when we help them do that, we get paid very, very well in order to do it. So I want to encourage you to include these kind of conversations. And by the way, to the extent that you're not comfortable doing so, you could certainly utilize me. I do a lot of joint work. In fact, that's the bulk of what I do on a day-to-day basis, is work hand in hand with wealth advisors, with their best clients, carving out what I consider to be a custom design insurance solution that fits inside of the overall financial plan. So if you want to learn more about how that might go, I would be more than happy to help you understand that. If you want any introductions into any advisors that have experience with me doing this, I'd be happy to make some introductions for you as well. Yeah. So our clients need us, again, to motivate them to operate into their best interest. So I put together a couple of lists of what I consider to be do's, and I've got a couple of don'ts. These are just tips that help us guide this conversation, right? Understanding that it's a conversation that's a process, not an event, right? I think you guys probably get that. That's the whole financial planning process. It isn't something that you exact one time and you're done with. It's kind of almost breathing. It's an ongoing thing. And by the way, if it's an ongoing thing, that means that there's a lot of things to sort of check off over time, right? So what we need to do is we need to make a list of the things we need to check off. We need to prioritize those things, and we need to systematically eat the elephant, right, in a process. Always ask if they have a personal experience, because it's really dramatic between those that have had experiences and those that haven't. And it's very helpful to be able to understand exactly where a client is before we sort of start talking, if you will. Let's figure out where they are, and then we can approach them from exactly where they are. The third bullet point, I have a fundamental belief that any premium is too much money. And I'm literal and serious. We ask a client for $1,000, for $200, for $10,000, for $80,000. I believe that number is high every time. Okay. What I want to do is understand, okay, that number though, what's the relationship between that number and your annual income, for example? Right? So if you're retired with $100,000 income, I might be able to say to you, hey, would you rather keep retirement A, where you have $100,000 of income and you have no long-term care insurance to the extent that you need care? There's no additional long-term care bucket, if you will. Or would you rather live on $95,000, 95% of your income, take the other 5% of your income, $5,000 a year, and maybe transfer $3,000 or $4,000 a monthly benefit to an insurance company. Oh, so for 5% of my income is a lot lower than $5,000 in my opinion. By the way, with that exact same example, well, what's the net worth of that individual or that couple? Maybe they're worth $2 million. Well, what percentage is $5,000 of their overall net worth? So you start thinking and describing it in that way, you go, yeah, you know what? I probably do need some of that. And it's been my experience that most people can get very solid coverage on life and long-term care for 5% or less of their income. So when you really put it in context like that, maybe that's not quite as much, right? So that's just a tip. Conducting meetings with both spouses is really important, especially if you're going to touch the heart. Generically, it's harder to touch men's hearts than it is women's in my experience. It's not entirely true, but it's often true. And so what's also often true is a lot of times the man is the decision maker, although I got to tell you, I see that changing big time in my practice. But if we just say generically that it's harder to touch a man's heart and that the man generically might be the decision maker, then you go, oh, providing insurance solutions to the man in this example may be difficult to do because people don't buy insurance because it's wise. They buy it because they love someone. We're able to identify something that they really care about. And sometimes it's hard to get down to that level. And so by being with both spouses, you're able to address both of them and you can uncover the motivation because it's all about motivation. If a client doesn't have a motivation to retire, they don't have a motivation to protect themselves or their spouse, and some clients don't. Now maybe they're not our clients and maybe they're not great clients, but it's not up to me to determine whether it's right or not what motivates them. It's up to me to understand what it is that does motivate them. And what I find is if you ask the right questions, they want to make sure that their family's taken care of. And if they want to make sure their family's taken care of, and we ask them, well, what's your plan if we have a premature death or we have a long-term care event? They'll say, my assets. You go, okay, well, would you like me to stress test those? Do you want me to model into the financial plan something like this happening so we can see where we might be? See how now we're bridging that emotional side with the logical side? That's how this stuff gets done, in my opinion. Certainly that's how I've had any success in getting people to implement. About 70 or 80% of the people that I meet with implement some sort of insurance solution with me. And I think part of that is because of these tips and how I approach these conversations. I do believe that that's important. But I believe the biggest reason why that is because the process is highly trusted by their wealth advisor and there's already a context of a financial plan in place. Right? And so the trust is already established, the context is already established. Now I come in as tactically as possible to sort of conduct this project almost inside of the financial plan. And then by doing so, we're executing what I call the platinum rule, which is to the extent I can understand and meet your needs, then my needs are met. All we have to do is go help clients, go educate clients, ask them to take action, motivate them to operate in their own best interest. The last bullet point there goes without saying, that's me. It's a shameless plug effectively, but that's also exactly what I do. So if you want help doing this, I'd be happy to help you. If you just want help being coached up sort of on the quote back end, I'd be happy to help you. You just want to have a conversation with me, no worries at all. You can talk with me. We don't have to do joint work together. I'll support you on that basis. If you need help from Andrew or George, they're happy to do the same thing for you. Okay? Here's a couple of don'ts from my experience. Do not lead with illustrations. Illustrations are compliant, approved. We need to use them. Clients need to see them. In many cases, they need to sign them. Do not start with illustrations. If you've ever tried to do that, it just never goes well because number one, illustrations are confusing. While they're compliance approved and required, they're really not for clients, they're for attorneys. Okay. So we're showing a document that's really functionally for an attorney to the average client. They don't know what they're looking at. But they're looking for one number. And what number is that? The premium. And so you show illustrations, one of two things is going to happen. They're going to pick the illustration with the lowest premium, or they're not going to pick any of them because they're all too expensive. And then with complete respect, what you've done is you've wasted their time and you've wasted your time. And candidly, you probably waste George or Andrew's time because they pulled all these quotes together that were meaningless from the beginning. I hope that doesn't seem too harsh, but leading with illustrations just does not go well, in my opinion. We're not asking them to buy insurance either. Now, Rod, are you trying to lie? Are you trying to be weird? Are you trying to be funky? No, I'm not doing that. I mean, clearly they have to buy the insurance, but I'm not asking them to buy the insurance. I'm asking them to take action on what they told me was important to them. By the way, I can't ask them to take action on something that's important to them unless I actually had a conversation with them and they declared to me what was important to them, right? So it's a subtlety, but I think it's a big one. People don't want to buy insurance, and neither do I. I don't want to buy insurance. You think I like paying my insurance premiums? Because I got to tell you, I do not like it. What do you mean you don't like it? I do not like it. I pay my insurance premiums and do not like it. Why do I pay my insurance premiums? Because I love my wife. Literally, because I promised my wife that she would be okay if I died or became disabled. I promised my wife that our budget is solid. I promised my wife that our wealth advisor is paying attention to our portfolio. That's what I care about. That's what I care about. Do I like what insurance is? No. I love what insurance does. By the way, I'm a huge optimist. And so my view of the world for myself and clients is let's look at the hard stuff. Let's put together a plan in place and let's go put it on the shelf. Let's turn around and be as optimistic as possible because I don't have to sit around worrying anymore, right? And I've addressed it. Don't cite statistics. This one, again, is interesting. I mean, statistics are important because we need to know what are we talking about. But statistics really have nothing to do with the individual that we're talking about. And it has to do with the macro, not necessarily the micro. And by the way, if we're citing statistics and showing illustrations, we're trying to tell them, see, this is a good deal. Look at these statistics. Well, they don't care about statistics and the premium's too high. I'm suggesting to you that they do probably care about their family. And maybe they don't care about all their family sometimes, but they probably care about their grandkids. Your clients probably care a lot about their grandkids. Why don't you ask them about it and see what they say? Ask them. Don't argue with clients. I mean, that kind of goes without saying. It's an odd one though, because I think about the intersection between who is the expert and who's the boss, right? So relative to financial planning, the expert is you, the advisor, it's me, we're the experts. What do I mean by that? I mean, we know not a little bit more than our client, we know way more than our client. So we're the experts. But we work for them, they don't work for us. Right? And so they're the boss, they're the client, which means that what they say goes. But if what they say goes, but they don't have enough expertise, that's where it's funky. That's why we have to earn the right to appropriately challenge them. You know what, based on what I heard you say, I'm not sure that this decision would be in line with that. Right? And so it's not really an arguing as much as it is a mirroring. If I heard you right, this is what I heard you say. Did I have that correct? Well, I'm seeing an incongruence here. Can you help me understand that more? That would be more about what I mean about not arguing. We can still do that and have good leadership, right? To be able to steward someone through this kind of conversation. All right, let me share with you a couple of beautiful pieces. Okay, I'm going to have to stop sharing and then I'm going to start sharing once again. So give me a quick second here. We have a couple of really nice pieces that will back up or help demonstrate how you can walk people through this. Show screen one right here. All right, this should do it for us. Yep, you should be seeing on your screen 5 wishes. So this is an 11-page document that we can make available to you if you reach out to me or George or Andrew. It can be a legally binding document. It can also just be a starting point for a conversation. Okay, so this is 5 wishes. This has been used by over like 1 million people over the last several years. This process has been featured on CNN and the Today Show and Time and Money magazine. And the premise here is that, you know, we've got 5 wishes, right? And what would those look like? By the way, this is a legal binding document in many states, but including most people on this call would be from Minnesota or they'd be from Illinois. Okay? And so wish number one is, who is the person that's going to make healthcare decisions for me in my absence? Right? That's important, the power of attorney. Okay, number two, what kind of medical treatment do I want or not want? What does life support treatment mean to me? Right, so again, if anything, it's just a thinking document at minimum. At maximum, it can become a legal document. Okay? And so again, what does that mean? It kind of walks you through. Don't have time today to walk through this document in detail, but if you want it from us, reach out. Wish number three, how comfortable do I want to be? I don't want to be in pain, right? Moist cloths. I mean, again, these are things that people don't walk around thinking. But if we're proactive instead of reactive, it makes everybody's life better, because we already have a terrible circumstance and we don't want to magnify that terrible circumstance. Wish number four, my wish for how I want people to treat me. Right? Wish number five, for what I want my loved ones to know. Okay? And so walking through this type of document, and then it can be signed and it can be witnessed, etc. And so this again could be a very nice tool for you to potentially use to help your clients think through this. Okay. Next thing we have here is a document about creating your written plan of care. If I was going to start with a long-term care conversation, you might want to consider starting with this particular document, which starts the conversation. Right? What experience, if any, have you had needing care? Starts out there. What is that like? Tell me about that. This could be something you could send ahead of a meeting to prime them, or you could use it in the meeting and sort of prompt them. Right? Do you believe that you could live in your 80s, 90s, or longer? Long-term care is an outgrowth of living a long life. So if we believe we're going to live a long life, it's reasonable to assume that due to the frailty of aging, that we might need help living a long life, right? Now, you might never require care, but if you did, how do you suppose it would affect your family emotionally? Right? This is that idea about providing the care instead of coordinating the care. How could it affect your family physically, right? And how could it affect your family financially? So these are great priming questions for them. Then relative to the plan of care, which is what we need more, we need to know what our plan is. Then we can determine how we're going to fund the plan. Where would you like to receive care? Who would you want to physically provide the care? Who would you want to coordinate the care? Then how will you pay for the care? And have you done any other planning? So it also pulls in these other legal documents, right? Then behind that, we have a very nice asset identifier. This is a great tool to identify dollars that you might not have under management. A lot of people, when you really get down to it and you ask them what their plan is for long-term care, they might identify a CD or a savings account that is sort of their, what I consider to be their lazy money. Well, you go, hey, where would you fund this from? And you can catalog that. This could be an opportunity for you to reposition some dollars that's in the bank account either into lump sum insurance products, or maybe get it into your portfolio, or some combination thereof. Behind that is a cost of care survey that Mutual of Omaha did in 2023 that breaks down home health, assisted living, and nursing home on a state-by-state basis. So this is a nice little piece. I've kind of just cherry-picked some of our best pieces, I believe, with the help of George and Andrew here. I thought this caregiving survey is pretty interesting. Securian put together a caregiving survey. Caregivers have it hard. I don't know if any of you have been a caregiver or you've known anybody that's a caregiver, but take a look at this. 1 in 4 caregivers say they spend 20 hours a week or more caregiving. That's a lot, right? What are the impacts of that? 50% said it affect their own job performance. Who are these people that are providing these care? It might be a 50-year-old person who's working, might be a 60-year-old person that's working. 41% had to take days off. 54% had trouble keeping up with daily tasks. Well, why is that? Because they've got 20 plus hours. Maybe they have 3 or 4 hours a day that they have to care for their loved one, right? What about the emotional impact? Well, look at this. You got 33% are concerned, 32% are overwhelmed, 28% are obligated, 30% honored. I thought this was interesting. I can definitely understand how a caregiver would be honored, because what a demonstration of love to be able to provide that type of care. I wonder how many people feel honored and concerned and overwhelmed and obligated. I'll bet you a lot of people do. right? Look at this. 70% regularly experience stress and anxiety. So again, it's not fun to talk about, but you identified that your adult daughter is the person you'd like to provide your care. Is that really what you want? Is that what she wants? Have you ever had that kind of conversation with her? Do you think it might be better for you and her if she were able to coordinate that care instead of pay for that care? See, there's no right answers to these things, but there's a context, a tone for determining that. What's important to you, and based on what's important to you, then we can move into what your plan is, and then we can figure out how are we going to fund that plan. Okay. Again, reach out to us if you want that document. Life insurance needs analysis, there's a bunch of them all over. There's many different ways to calculate this. This happens to be a very good piece from John Hancock. Just write down what kind of income do we need? Do we want to pay off any expenses? What existing assets and insurance do we have in place that can offset this need? And then what's the amount that we're short, right? So just like anything else, what's our goal? What's our current reality? And how do we bridge the gap between the two? This last one, this is probably the best single document for implementing insurance on an intentional basis, in my opinion, from the carrier level. So this is a North American life insurance company product, effectively. They call this a sales solution roadmap. And what they've done a really great job, notice that it's 20 pages, is they're outlining a lot of the different strategies that present themselves that allow insurance to fund, like maximizing annuity benefits, like business solutions, including buy, sell, executive bonus, key person, etc. Right? College funding, estate planning, just straight up income protection, pension maximization. This is something I'm seeing more of lately. Not exactly sure why that is. It might just be an anomaly, but looking at being able to insure a pension so that someone might be able to take the 100% pension instead of the joint and survivor, and maybe buy insurance for the difference, right? That's largely a math equation. A lot of people don't even consider using insurance in that way. And because they don't consider using insurance in that way, what they often do is default to the 50 or 75% number that pays over both spouses' lifetimes. That may or may not be the best thing for them. Might make more sense to take the higher pension and buy life insurance. By the way, what's really cool about that kind of structure is math kind of tells us pretty quickly whether it works or doesn't work. So if that's not something you've considered before, consider that and reach out to us if you have something like that. So these are some of the good pieces that I have. All right. So at the end of the day, then, what I'm conveying to you today, and we're going to wrap up in the next couple of minutes, is that everyone wants answers. Right? And if we don't ask them, who's going to ask them? And if we have the right kind of context and the right kind of questions, we can draw this out and put together something very meaningful. All insurance boils down to, do I have a risk of something like this happening? If we've got somebody who won't believe that there's a risk, well, they're in denial. If they're in denial, there's no way they're going to implement anything. So the first step is really, do they understand and accept that a risk exists? Then number two is, do they care about that risk? Now we have to determine, okay, now that you get that, what's your plan? How do you feel about that? If a client's aware a risk exists but doesn't care about the risk, they won't do anything about it. So what we're after is identifying the risk, figuring out what they care about, and then if that's the case, then we can educate them on what their options are. So here's a couple of things you could consider that other clients have considered. As I mentioned, I think it's a demonstration of love to be able to do this. I'm a touchy-feely guy, but guess what? Insurance is bought because people love each other. And so, or even love something, business planning, they love their business perhaps. And so we need to be able to uncover that for motivation. So our next Coach's Corner is scheduled for May 23rd. We do send out always be learning emails, although not to everybody on this call, I suppose. But we send out timely. I write, articles or little blurbs of different things. We've got a huge library of this as well. To the extent you want to see any of those, you can certainly reach out to us. We do have an insurance advisor toolbox that holds or warehouses all of our best stuff, including previous Coaches Corners. please reach out to me or Andrew or George on your next case. I do believe that when we do the right thing, what we end up doing is we drive revenue, we protect our assets under management, and ultimately create that competitive immunity. All right. So in the last few minutes, we've got Andrew's contact information up here. If you need that, please reach out to him. We've got George's, and then ultimately we have mine here as well. So with that, I hope you found value in this. I want to encourage you to be a great leader, maybe be courageous. It does take some courage to have this kind of conversation. If you yourself haven't wrapped up what you need to do for yourself, I highly encourage you to do that. If you want help thinking through that for yourself, I'd be happy to help you think that through as well. And I know that George and Andrew would as well. So with that, I want to thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day. Hopefully the check you had to write to the IRS on Monday didn't get you down too low. I guess in a certain way, it's a privilege when you have to write a big check, because that means that you made some money. So, but I know it's sometimes a tough week for people out there. So with that, let's be great leaders. Let's help our clients, and let's drive revenue to our practices. Appreciate all of you. Have a wonderful day. Take care.